Here's my lunch. Well, I've had lunch, no Butcombe Gold, sadly, because I thought I ought to save my money. And I'm in a charming little sort of nature reserve cum wild playground at the bottom of the Marston Ferry Road. Very unusual seat here. And I didn't sit on it earlier because somebody else was using it. And this is what I had my lunch in. It's a tin that you've seen in my Meadow Lane video, just south of Donington Bridge, where I went down Meadow Lane to Iffley. Somebody had put some stuff free to collect outside their house. And I took the tin because it looked useful. And indeed it was useful. It's just the right size to hold a pair of hard-boiled eggs, which until very recently today it was doing. And what I'm now going to do is to get onto Marston Ferry Road and then video Cherwell Drive at the request of one of the commenters. And a little bit of history. Cherwell Drive is quite recent and I've not been able to find out that much about it. There's a row of shops. There's a row of shops between Marsh Lane and Copse Lane, the first two main roads that come out on the left after the entrance to Old Marston, just before the road starts sloping upwards. And their address is now Cherwell Drive, but apparently in 1938 the shops were there, and they were then listed as being part of Headley Way. If you look at website histories of Oxford, a lot of people seem to rely on something called Kelly's Directory for when streets were built or named, because the directory apparently lists all the streets known at the time, and the first listing of Headley Way apparently is Kelly's Directory 1938. And as I say, those shops between Marsh Lane and Copse Lane were listed as part of Headley Way, though now they're officially part of Cherwell Drive. Cherwell Drive itself is more recent, not listed in Kelly's Directory until 1949. So let's have a look at the houses on each side and see how they tally with that. And in my next video, I'll have a story to tell about why Headley Way was built. So now I'm leaving this little nature space. Apple, Ellison's orange. Once tasted, never forgotten. Crisp, juicy flesh. Good off the tree, doesn't keep. Norfolk Royal, eating apple. So now I'm pointing up Cherwell Drive towards Headley Way, and this is the bottom of the Marston Ferry Road. That's the entrance to Old Marston Village. That is St Nicholas Primary School. once I cross, I'll be on Cherwell Drive. So there's the Cherwell Drive sign. And as I said, this was first listed in Kelly's directory in 1949, though the shops that are now part of it predate that. That, for reference, is number 102. Videoing houses can be tricky, but this road is broad enough that I can get a house on the other side completely in my field of view, and there's not so much traffic that it blocks me. That is number 94, 94A, I think. That is number 80. And that is Elms Drive. I think it's Elms rather than Elm. That is number 66 on the right and 68 on the left. That, I think, is number 52. And it's a pleasant enough road. The houses look neat, at least. I can't tell how good the building quality is, but there's nothing obviously falling apart. Nicely painted. And if the road were quieter, I wouldn't mind living here. There's not as much variety in the houses as in Sandfield and Staunton roads, which I videoed a little while ago. That's partly, I think, because the people who sold the land for Sandfield and Staunton made it a requirement that the houses should be varied in style. There should be no more than one of each design or something of the sort. And that's fairly unusual. And Cherwell Drive is a fairly short road, so I'll soon be round the other side. And this is the row of shops. That is Marsh Lane on the left, and I went part of the way up it, further up, when I was in Old Marston, when I did the Old Marston video. That is Copse Lane on the left, to the left at the right hand end of the block of shops, and there's a cut through that joins them maybe a quarter of a mile or so on, and I peered into that when I did the Old Marston video. And it's a useful enough collection of shops. There's a charity shop currently run by Sobel House. There's a pizzeria. There's a co-op. I'm not sure what Homewood is. There's an Oxford Cafe and Grill, which used to be a rather more twee-looking delicatessen. And there's one or two other things. And then there are a few shops down here too, and these are all worth knowing, and so is the fact that I can't actually see it, but unless it's changed, there should be a little shop in the garage too that serves stuff. It's certainly got an advert for a Costa Express and a Lundis, and that's useful to know if you're really stuck for refreshments. So this is the top of Marston Road, and that goes down past the New Marston estate on the right. As you get nearer the bottom, there's a road up to Harberton Mead, which I've videoed. There's Jack Straw's Lane. There are various other ways to get to Pullen's Lane on the left. There's the Headington Hill Park and the Islamic Studies Centre, and an entrance to the University Parks on the right. In fact, several entrances, including a cycle path. And now we get to Headley Way. So I'm going to cross and do the other side of Cherwell Drive. The bottle top looks like an off licence. And then there's the Mediterranean Fish Bar, which has one or two branches around Oxford. The Oxford Cafe and Grill is the one that used to be the Twee delicatessen. The Cherwell House shop has got quite an interesting collection of weird stuff in it. That's a Pizza Hut. That's Cherwell Drive's co-op. Yeah, that's part of the co-op too. So there are the shops on the left of Cherwell Drive. And the garage. These houses are a different style from those on the other side, so I wonder what happened there. This is Ewin Close. Then we have some blocks of flats, courtesy of Ewin Court. Then we have an abrupt change of style, house style. And then we have another change. And that's quite a leafy Cherwell Drive now, looking towards Headington Main Road. And here's quite a leafy rest of Cherwell Drive leading towards Marston Ferry Road. That's number 100. And I'd never noticed that before, but this person has collected a red telephone box. They've got a van in their garden that says safety officer. I wonder whether they are a safety officer or they're being visited by one. And that's where Cherwell Drive joins the Oxford Road. Probably so called because it's no longer Old Marston. And this is where Cherwell Drive joins the Marston Ferry Road. And turns into Old Marston. So that is Cherwell Drive. See you next time.